those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to this bonus episode of the Wild Die podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike.
So yeah, bonus episode, a review this time, brought to you by Manuel. Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was quite a pleasure reading the book.
So yeah, today we'll be talking about the Children of the Apocalypse. That's one of the newer settings out by Happy Monster Press, written by Scott Marchand Davis. Right, and disclaimer first. So a couple months back, we were contacted by Scott. He wanted us to review his book, and even at first for a Kickstarter interview, we don't really do those anymore. So Manuel was kind enough to pick it up for Veiled Fury Entertainment, and he interviewed Scott. A good interview about that, so go check it out. There's more information in there. Yeah, it turns out that Manuel had the book too, and I asked him if he'd like to do a review on it for the show, and he kindly agreed. So take it for what it's worth. We were asked by him, but it just turns out basically that Manuel likes it, knew about it, and he was like I said, kind enough to do it. So how about we cover to cover?
Open up the books. Open up the books. That's what it's called, isn't it? Is that what it's called?
No, Open the Books is the one with the questions.
But get between the covers. Get between the covers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, one and all, to Between the Covers, the hottest and most greased up segment on this podcast. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Things are gonna get a bit weird in here. No, it's nothing sexy. Sorry, what? It's kind of where we talk about a Savage Worlds book from cover to cover. Like some sort of book club. Well, essentially, yes. Well, in that case, I'm leaving. Oh, yeah. See you later.
Children of the Apocalypse, epic fantasy on a twisted future Earth. 8 new races created by the 9 gods to serve their will. A gazetteer for post-apocalyptic Boston. Guidance for adapting any present-day geography to the world of the 9 gods. Setting rules for black powder and high magic. Adversaries ranging from monsters to a rival band of adventurers determined to thwart the party's every move. And finally, a complete plot point campaign. Prophecy of the Undying. Can the adventurers survive against the gods themselves? So yeah, we're going to find out if all of that holds up.
Can I ask a question? When you say fantasy, sure. Is it fantasy as in dwarves and elves, or fantasy as in like 3 women doing it all at once? Because that's my personal fantasy.
It's not the first kind of fantasy because there are no dwarves or elves. There are different races which are kind of unique and molded to the system.
So it's the second one.
I believe the system can handle the second one, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. This sounds amazing.
So first I would like to talk about the trade dress of the book as I have it. And, well, the PDF is pretty much the same. A lot of what the Kickstarter wanted to accomplish was to generate funds for artwork and editing. And sadly, it really shows that that money didn't come in. It's not a bad looking book. Absolutely not. I think for the budget he had, he did some really, really great work. The page background really works. The ideas he had for putting artwork in it absolutely work. It's just that he had to rely on stock art, and the book actually mixes drawings with 3D renderings of artwork, which I'm not a big fan of, because it gives a very mixed vibe. I prefer non-3D rendered artwork in role-playing books.
So would you describe it as fart work?
That's a good one. I haven't heard that one before. I wouldn't go that far, because even the 3D renders he chose, they really work in transporting to show what he wanted visualized. It's an art style that I personally don't enjoy in RPG books, and it really clashes with the great drawings and illustrations that are in the book.
But you could still at least pick it up and show it to a player to be like, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough. Then.
That absolutely works. It comes a bit down to personal preference on those. If you don't mind mixed art styles in a book, then you really won't have any problems. One point of critique I know exists, I think it actually came from Eric, was that the page numbers are very hard to read in the PDF. Funnily enough, that's actually not the case in the book. In the book, you can read the page numbers all right. But I can see the problem, because it's a red number, and it's a very light red on a black and white background, and the numbers and letters, they are not framed by like a black border or something to make them really easy to read. So yeah, if you're reading this in dim light, then I'm guessing you're gonna have to going to have a bit of a problem reading the page numbers. But that's about the only point of critique I'd have with the choice of fonts and everything. And it's interesting because some of the titles actually have a black border to make them really easy to read with the red color he chose for.
What font is it?
I have actually no idea. Yeah, the hot action actually starts in the ruins of Boston in the year 491 after the War of the Gods. So the book begins with a short introduction to the world, a very brief history of the world since the apocalypse. It's only a double page. It's 2 pages of history to get you up to speed of what happened. And the basic idea is, about 500 years ago, the gods went to war with each other, and in the process, they just basically nuked the whole world, and barely anyone was left standing. And from those ashes and ruins, the civilizations and races as they exist now clawed their way out with the help of the gods in some cases, and rebuild settlements, rebuild kingdoms, rebuild their own societies. And now there is it's kind of a bit of a black and white scenario with some twists, because there are 9 gods. 4 of them are basically good. One of them is a trickster god, so you never have any idea of what's going on in his mind. And the other 4 are what you could describe as evil, but they're not really evil for evil's sake. They just have their own ideas for how the world should be run. And that clashes with the other 4. So,
okay. So that's not quite as sexy as you led me to believe.
Oh, we're getting to that part. Don't worry. It's
okay,
coming.
okay.
So after that we're basically jumping straight into character creation. Character creation doesn't hold any big surprises. There's a few new races, because some of the gods created new races to worship them and do their bidding, because the gods don't interfere with the world directly. They just act through their followers. Which is why one of the setting rules is the doubting Thomas hindrance doesn't exist in this world, because everybody knows the gods exist, because they actually they interfere with others through their worshippers. And wouldn't make any sense to just say, I don't believe you exist, while a god is actually talking to you. Actually, there is 9 races, and more or less each one is tied to a certain god, with the exception of humans, which are basically free to follow whoever they want. But that goes for any race. The races were created by the gods, but that doesn't mean they are slaves to them for the most part. A lot of them choose to follow the god that created them, but you could play and illuminated and worship Iset. Wouldn't be a problem. Don't worry, I'm going to explain that. So the races overall, they don't change much. They're created by the basic character creation rule or race creation rules as they were introduced in core. But he's also referencing the fantasy companion for a bit, for at least one arcane background. So a few things tend to blend in, but the fantasy companion is actually not required to play it. You could just pick up core, pick up Children of the Apocalypse, and you'd be good to go.
Do Illuminated have a penalty to sneak?
Actually, they don't, as per the description of the race, but they are interesting because the Illuminated are named the Illuminated because they actually glow. Their entire bodies are made of light.
So, wouldn't that make it difficult to sneak?
If it's night, yeah.
Good point. But I thought, at any time of the day, surely that would be annoying.
I can see the Illuminated being a race that's interesting to play and could be difficult to handle by a GM, especially by not so experienced GM. The point about the Illuminated is their bodies are made of light, but they have a physical body, so you just don't think about it too much in terms of real world physics. You're going to hurt yourself.
Fair enough.
Their bodies and standard clothing they're wearing are made of light, but they have a physical presence, so they can put on armor. They can be hurt if you strike them with a sword, and they can't actually fly, but they tend to hover a little bit.
Cool. Are there any other cool races? Can you be a werebear?
Not really a werebear. There is the Tanain. Not really sure how to pronounce it right. Which were created by the demon god, and they are a very demon-like race. Mostly feared throughout the worlds for that. And then there are the Adarkan. I don't know. I'm so sorry, Scott. I'm sure you mentioned all of this in the interview, and I promptly forgot all of it. And those are actually beastmen. So kind of you can play a bear person, not a werebear, but a bear person.
I'm happy with that.
The rest of the of the races are pretty much a bit more human-like. The Basselin are 4 arms. They are master artificers. They like to tinker with stuff. They actually get a bonus for it, just like the Illuminated are the more or less the designated race for anybody who wants to play a magic user, because they get extra power points when you select them.
I will stop asking stupid questions in a minute, I promise. But with the 4 arm dudes, do you get like does it mention anything about multi-action penalties? This isn't. I promise you, this isn't me trying to be stupid. But like, because you've got an extra set of arms, would they be used to multitasking? Because I remember in Mortal Kombat, for example, he used to do this move where he'd pick someone up with one set of arms and pin their arms to their side, and then start punching them in the face with the other set of arms.
That's actually what I was thinking they would have, but they actually don't have that. They just don't get a penalty for using their offhand. Basically, they have ambidextrous as a race edge. Yeah. Oh,
that's pretty cool. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, pretty much. Then there are no standard fantasy races in there. The other races are a bit more human-like, although they vary a bit. The Ritters, which are Rahel's chosen race, they're a warrior race. They're the big strong guys. One could argue, if you break it down a lot, they are orcs who look a bit more like humans. And one of the other interesting races are the Ingena, which are also a race created by one of the evil gods in air quotes, and they are human-like. They are very pretty, and the problem with them is they have to actually consume human flesh. Oh no, not human flesh. They have to consume living flesh to sustain themselves, and the problem is humans just are the tastiest.
So like zombies.
Depends on which kind of zombie you're talking about, because the classic zombie wants to eat brains. But the 28 days later zombies, they are normal people. They are intelligent. They just have the problem that to really sustain themselves, they are required to eat living flesh. They can eat animals. It's not a problem. It's just human just doesn't even, or it's human flesh. It doesn't just taste like chicken. It's finger licking good. This podcast is not endorsed by KFC. If you want to KFC, give us a call.
No.
The interesting thing about the Ingenna is they actually have claws, kind of like cats, which they can protrude from their fingers, which do a lot of damage, and they have paralyzing poison, which is dripping from their claws.
Shut up. Do they have a face like a cat, though?
No.
Boring. Move on.
To play a cat person, you'd have to play an other cat.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, I forgot about that.
The beast force, so.
But do they even? But then they don't have claws, so they're kind of rubbish beast person. So one race has claws, one has the face. So they just split the beast traits in half.
Are they hunted by vegans? Like vegans are their enemies?
Yeah.
The book actually doesn't mention vegetarians or vegans. So I'm guessing they were too busy with surviving and not dying after the apocalypse.
Fair enough.
To have morals? Yeah. Scum. Scum.
Proteins are hard to come by. You take what you can get.
Yeah. Well, at this point, the civilization has been rebuilt to a early pre-black powder stage. So I'm guessing there's people with enough to get by who could consider, well, I might just go vegetarian because I like animals. But then they could just eat the beast folk who try to invade their realm, and
suppose so,
because they had it coming. Could be. Not sure if that would be considered cannibalism in this setting. Moving on.
Indeed.
Well, after the races, there is a short overview over occupations. I think those are in there to give you an idea about what professions people what professions people have in that setting, just to reinforce the point of it may be post-apocalyptic, but it's been so long and so much has been destroyed. It's basically a medieval society now with early access to black powder weapons.
They're basically the archetypes, right? That we see in most settings.
Yeah, but they don't provide any guidance as to attributes and skills, but most of them don't.
Most of them don't. It's just a paragraph. And then you've got commoner or adventurer, like you're playing an adventure game. So you're going to play an adventurer.
Well, see, that was going to be my next question. Does it include my absolute favourite, commoner?
Nope.
Ah, well, this game sucks, man.
It's called peasant.
Well, that's okay, I guess. But it's offensive to vegans. It doesn't include commoner. Cat people don't even have claws. Yeah, I don't know,
so
man.
commoners are in there. They're just called peasants.
Okay, all right, okay. But you may be just a common person, but not be a peasant. You could just okay. Look, okay, I'm willing to forgive it. Let's move on. Let's move on. Sorry.
Then there's a short paragraph about character naming, because it is a kind of fantasy setting, but because it evolved from our world as we know it, the naming conventions are not shouldn't be fantasy. You wouldn't be named Alaric the Great. You just have your basic people named John Smith, or as the examples as he gives them, Elizabeth Johnson, Lisa Kowalski, Steve Carlson, Arthur Peabody. So Just take and use normal names as they exist today. If you want to give it a little twist, try to pronounce them differently like we do today, because obviously language evolves over a few hundred years.
Okay, so instead of Dave, you'd be Darve.
You could do that, yeah. Absolutely. That's actually a point he's making a bit later in the book. Then there are a few setting rules, but not many, just enough to really reinforce the setting. One I already mentioned, it's called Serious Doubt, which basically just means you can take the Doubting Thomas hindrance, but it counts as a major hindrance because the gods are alive and active, so it's really hard to ignore that.
Would you basically be insane at that point, though?
A lot of people might actually consider you insane, yeah.
That's really funny.
Because it's like you've seen our troops getting blessed for battle and you could see their shields glowing. What's wrong with you? And you'd be standing there like, no, that was just the sun.
I don't believe it, mate. My name's Darve. I'm going back down to Boozer.
Yeah, Darve really is an idiot. Just don't go out adventuring with Darve. He's going to get you killed.
Him and Sade.
No, in that case, it would just be Shade.
Shade, yeah. No, I'm looking at the setting rules, and really, I mean, it's nothing that really changes how Savage Worlds work. Besides, there's even new edge in the setting rules, where usually you just put it in the new edges section, so and then the arcane backgrounds, a few changes for that, suggested knowledge skills, the language, tongues of the gods, so it tells you which kind of languages are spoken in that setting, and like you said, black powder, so there's nothing in there that really changes the rules all that much, which is good for those that like something really lean, like we've been talking about for the past couple episodes on the show, right?
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed that, going through a chapter of setting rules, which for the most part weren't really setting rules. So I know I can just give that a once over, and I'll be like, cool, I'm set. There's not a ton of stuff. There aren't 2 pages of setting rules I have to remember every time I run something. Because it just keeps it close to core, makes it easy to run. The world is based on our world, which gives you a general idea. Makes it really easy to run and keeps the prep work way down, which I enjoyed a lot. Within the setting rules, you're going to find a list of powers divided by church, so you know which powers are available to the priests of the respective gods and how they trap their powers, how it all looks. Which I think is a nice way. I have seen that once before in Sundered Skies. That was, I believe, an extra PDF they released, just to give you an idea of how to flavor the priest you are playing and how to make that magic look. Because that's something I see people struggling with very often, even seasoned players, and then they start playing a spellcaster for the first time and they are casting Bolt, and you go, okay, cool, so how does your Bolt look like? And they don't know what to say. They have no idea. They're completely drawing a blank. So you get a lot of inspiration from that, which I think is really cool.
Hellfrost does it too. Each priesthood has its own list of powers and trappings.
So this one is then followed by a few pages of the Heroes of Peterborough, which I believe are archetypes, sample characters. It doesn't actually say that they are characters. They are sample characters like that. But the way it looks, that is so just you get an idea of what you can actually play. There's a musketeer in there. There's a tinker mage. There's a psionic, a standard adventurer, which are called treasure hunters in this setting. Mm-hmm. Then a priest of Iset, a mercenary, an illuminated, a champion of Iset, and a wizard. And they're going through a lot of the races, and also the races which were made by the evil gods. just to reinforce the point, you can't play any race and be one of the good guys. Just if you play one of the races that were made by a dark god, you may have some problems in the civilized parts of the world, but it's not completely unheard of. So
Or people just immediately recognize that you're partly evil. They'll just know. What do you have to go around with like a really sick haircut or something?
They don't know you're evil. They just know that you're part of a race that was made by an evil god, and most of their races, the respective races, worship their gods.
Oh,
so,
of course, yeah. So you'll just walk in and they'll be like, "Oh, you're an evil dude." Well, you could always just put like a really wide hat on.
Always an option.
Keep it down.
Unless you're a bear, then the hat probably would do too much. You'd need a big coat also.
Shave, and wear a mustache.
So shave everything besides the hair that would
The upper
form
lip,
a
yeah.
mustache.
And then people won't know. They'll just think you're a very oddly shaped human.
Might work.
It's not a bad idea. So, pro tips for children of the apocalypse.
Play a bear person and shave.
Because there was that old story, wasn't there, about in AD&D where somebody apparently played a bear and had such a high persuasion or something like this that they managed to convince the mayor that he wasn't a bear and all of this stuff. And
I remember that story.
I'm sure it wasn't true, but the thing is now this game actually allows you to do it because the bear person can actually speak, and now you can finally live that dream.
Yeah, you could finally play a real living Sir Barrington.
Yep.
That would be funny. So each of those characters comes provided with a bit of backstory, so you know where they come from, what their motivations are, and by that you also get some idea about how the setting works and how even someone from one of the evil races could make their way into the more civilized parts of the world and just be a part of that and overcome the problem of being seen as a bad person and gain the trust of the people around you. And then, of course, you could backstab them and burn the town down when they're not looking, but maybe you're really not a bad person, so that is a possibility.
Well, I wouldn't do that because I'm a nice person. Unlike you,
Moving
Manuel. On. Shut up.
Well, next is a short equipment section, which is short to the point, a bit of adventuring gear, and 2 pages of medieval weapons. And
how long is Sorry. No, carry on.
Yep, go on.
No, I was going to say. So, is there nothing really? There's nothing really worth having in there then? Is it all really kind of basic stuff?
Pretty much, yeah. I believe that it's pretty equal to the list provided in the core rulebook as it comes to the items. Clothing is a bit more elaborate with normal clothing, formal clothing, winter cloaks and such, but those are basically just flavor. They don't grant a bonus or anything, so it focuses mainly on weapons, and those are your basic fantasy medieval weapons and armor list. You know, axes, swords, spears, plate armor, leather armor, throwing axes, crossbows. Then there are black powder weapons. Black powder has just been discovered, and it's reliable enough to manufacture firearms. So you've got a musket, a blunderbuss, and a pistol in there. And then there's a few entries about siege weapons, which I thought is
the black powder weapons. Are there any new rules regarding that, or is that kind of close to what was already in? I don't know if it's in core or not, but I played a lot of Solomon Kane, and I know there are rules in there like about getting ammo wet, how long it takes to reload them, and you've got the musketeer edge and all of that stuff. Is it pretty much the same as that stuff?
There are no rules concerning that. There's one of the setting rules. There is a new edge which is in the setting rules chapter. You can take to reduce the reload time for the black powder weapons, but they are the basic black powder weapons from the core rulebook. They just they do a fair amount of damage. They take forever to reload. As in they take 2 actions to reload. They are ridiculously expensive. Just to give you a point of reference, a longbow costs $200, which seems to still be the choice of currency, and a flintlock pistol costs $1,500.
The thing is, though, I find they're in a fantasy setting where they're uncommon. They tend to be quite a good opening attack, and people tend to be quite scared of them. So
That is true, yeah.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, that's quite good, I suppose. So I've got to be honest. I don't mean to be rude. At this point, I'm quite unimpressed. I don't think it's done a lot to wow me. What's like the big thing that this book does that makes this stand out and be different? Because it's got the races in there, granted, but a lot of stuff is already stuff from core, right? So
It is pretty much from core, yeah.
You mentioned that this book it gives you the what you need to take any modern setting and make it into like a post-apocalyptic thing, right? Is that something that's said on the back? Am I wrong? Am I misremembering?
Yep, that is something that was said on the back. We're going to come to that later because the next chapter is about where I believe the setting really shines. It's the description of the 9 gods.
Okay, good.
And there are 9 gods. 4 of them are good, 4 of them are evil, and then there's the trickster god, and each one of those gods comes with an area of influence where they actively participate in the development of their chosen people, and while there is a kind of peace between them, the gods don't like each other that much. So there is going to be rivalry. And I think the descriptions of them, while rather short, they really drive the point home of the interconnections between the gods, how they're connected to each other, and who's going to be at whom's throat, and how that is going to influence the world, also with the plot point campaign, but that comes later. So there are the 4 good gods, which are kind of grouped together as the Church of 4. And those are comprised by Isid, which is the goddess of justice and learning. And you could say Isid is basically the good kind of goddess. She's trying to be just, she's trying to be fair, she wants her people to thrive and learn and explore the world and grow to be better than they were yesterday. So then there's Edward, who created the Illuminated, and he's the patron god of mages and psychics, and he actually created magic in the world. So that was Edward in the beginning, a few hundred years ago.
Thanks, Ed, for creating magic.
Yeah, cheers, Ed, for creating mages and psychics. So there's this ongoing rivalry in the setting between mages and psionics. Basically, who came first, who's better, who's more in favor of their chosen god, which can be interwoven in a campaign in some funny ways if you get a psionics character and a mage in the same group, because you could actually interact with Edward and talk to him, and those two guys could be like, who's your favorite kid? Do you like him more than you like me? That could be a very interesting conversation. Then there's Jonas, the god of tinkers and alchemists, and he's a very reclusive god, and he's one of the only gods that doesn't really have a city he watches over. It's more like they're wandering people, just like their god, who always seems to be wandering the world looking for relics and artifacts of the past. Because that's one of the interesting parts about this setting is it is our modern world in 500 years after an apocalypse. So the cities are going to be still standing. All the tech is still going to exist, albeit it may be rusted and decayed and everything, but it's still going to be there. And the way this setting handles it is that those are considered artifacts from the past, and the Tinker Mages can use those to create their powers and to create the items they are using to channel their powers.
So let's say, for instance, you find a working DVD player and a DVD of, Animal House. What are you going to do with that? What power are you going to make out of that?
What power would you make out of that?
Confusion.
Confusion, yeah, that's what I was going to say. And it could be like like an enchanting type trapping.
Yeah, kind of. So like one of those portable DVD players, something where
Yeah,
you could just show them. I have a talking box. Behold the talking box. Everybody would be like, "What?"
You press play and then it goes Animal House, and then everyone's watching it. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, that is absolutely. You could do that.
So that's top tip
That's
number 2.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, and you can do the basic stuff. Like you could actually find an old AR-15 or something, but you'd need a Tinker Mage to make it work, and then use the bolt power.
So far we've got a bear in a long coat who has shaved everything except his mustache, and his name's Darve, and he's using a portable DVD player with Animal House on it to enchant people. I am impressed by this setting. This is wicked.
Yep. And then there is Rahel, and she's the goddess of law and war, and with her it begins to get a bit blurry, because her idea of Iset is the goddess of justice, and she means it like that, being just, not just enforce the letter of the law, but enforce the spirit to make society better. Rahel is like, you follow my lead or I'm gonna chop your head off. And if you are in the vicinity of a Rahel city, you're probably going to be annexed one way or another and have to follow her rules. So she is still kind of one of the good guys, but it's getting interesting there because bloodshed, going to happen regularly. So, and then you come to that were the 4, which are the Church of the 4, and then there are the 5, which are the bad or evil gods. There is Stein, who is the trickster god, and it's kind of funny because he's actually married to Rahel.
But imagine
and he's always
you've got like all of these gods, right? So there's one that's the goddess of just the law and war and doors, and then you've got one that's the god of justice and all of this, and then one of them's the trickster god. Doesn't that seem like he's got a raw deal there?
Nah, I don't think so. Would you care to elaborate what you mean?
Because like all the others are gods of like really cool things, and then he just sort of messes with people. I suppose if that's what he likes to do, then it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just his shtick. He likes messing up other people's plans to I'm guessing for his own amusement, but in Rahel's case, it's because he's married to Rahel. He's married to the goddess of war, and she's always focused on conquest and everything. So he tends to play tricks on her more often than the others, just to gain her attention. To be like, "Hey, oi, you've got a husband, you remember?" She'd be like, "Shut up! And I'm in the middle of conquering a city." And he'd be like, "No, you're not anymore."
Does he ever directly mess with mortals? So would there ever be like complete acts of chaos and things like this happening to players, for example, and they might not know why?
Not by the hand of the god, but by the hand of one of his followers, sure.
So yeah, they might be midway through doing a mission, and then suddenly a dump truck shows up and dumps 500 copies of Animal House on them, and they don't know why.
Well, there are no working vehicles, but I
No,
can see
there
what you
are,
mean.
because the Tinkerer might fix one.
You know, that's actually a very interesting idea for the speed trapping or something. Yeah.
Or the fly spell.
Yeah. If you just fix up a helicopter, it wouldn't fly very far because they don't have that many power points, but it could fly.
Yeah, you get it going for like a second, and then you'd crash it into a building.
Yeah. Well, moving on, there is Torlo, the god of tyrants and blood war, and yeah, he is the very evil version of Rahel. He's just about conquering and drinking the blood of his enemies from their skulls.
Wouldn't it spill out of the eyes?
About as evil. Depends on if the eyes are still in their sockets. Depends if it's a fresh head or not.
Okay, fair enough. Good point, Manuel. You don't have to be so literal. Actually, no, that's what I was doing. Sorry. All right, forget it. Carry on.
Yep. Then there is Tivoli. She's the goddess of lust and torment, and usually those two come intertwined in some way when dealing with her and with her followers. So she actually has followers throughout all the major cities, and they are the the evil, a bit darker side of courtesans and such.
Right. As
Yeah.
interesting as this
So-
is, Manuel, we've got very little time left. So, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so I'm gonna hurry this up a bit. Then there is Verret, the god of beasts and destruction, who made the Beastmen, and those guys are just all about causing chaos, organizing themselves in tribes, and running all over the place and screwing up other people's day. One interesting one is the last of the 5. It's Juno, the goddess of disease and death, because she's basically the most powerful lich alive. She's the goddess of death, so she creates undead and the kingdom of the undead, which she actually rules over. Yeah, that is her. And with all the gods, there are small fragments in the text showing how they are interconnected. Some of the gods, as I mentioned already, are married to each other. Isid, Edward, and Jonas have kind of a love triangle going on. So if you actively follow one god, that could come up as some interesting conflict points. Also within the group. Then there is following an overview of a post-apocalyptic society, how it all evolved into what it is now, a description of where this setting and the not this setting where the plot point campaign is centered on, because Boston and the environments, with major settlements in and around Boston, which god they worship, what problems they face, what kind of armies they have. And that is so far 34 pages out of 79 pages for this whole book, because the rest of it from page 34 on forward is the complete Game Master section. And that is where the true history is written, what really happened, how the gods came to be, how the world nearly ended. So I'm not going to spoil that, because this is where the twist happens, and I honestly don't want to spoil it because I think it's really cool to discover that one if you're reading it, if you're planning to run it.
Can you tell me the twist now, and I'll bleep it out?
Do I trust you to bleep it out? That is the question.
Yeah, come on, man. The amount of stupid crap I say that I have to bleep out.
In the beginning, there were a lot of them.
All right, okay, that's too long. That's too long. It's too long. Okay, I'm not going to bleep all of it. Okay. All right, stop. Okay, there's going to be a really short bleep, but what people are going to not realise is that went on for bloody ages. Okay, so the twist is quite long. All right, well, anyway, so is the plot point Shut up. Wait, is the plot point campaign good? Do you think?
I think it's really good because it's one of those plot point campaigns that starts with a few short adventures to get you a feeling for the world and get the group together and establish some major NPCs, and then it just takes on and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and in the end the world is not going to be the same.
Okay, fair enough then. So overall,
so that I really enjoyed reading that because that really takes on what a plot point campaign should be. There's also some Savage Tales to interweave in between. There's a bestiary for adversaries. There's some maps in there. So you get a really cool package to start playing. Even if you want to play only a few Savage Tales in the setting, you get some very good ideas from the book.
And
Adventure generator too, right?
Yeah, there is an adventure generator. Thank you for bringing that up. That one I almost forgot. But yeah, it's a short and to the point adventure generator. It's a single page with a few die rolls, not based on cards and on who is involved, what it's about, where it's going, what's the complication. Nothing overly fancy, but very well done, and really works for the setting and for the world it's in.
All right. So give us a number rating out of 70.
I would say 55.
That's not bad. You heard it here, listeners. That's high. That's above average. Way above average.
Yeah, because I'm giving you 55 because while it is a generic idea, I believe the twist is really cool. The twist works, and the way he brought it to life really works. It's nothing fancy, but it is nothing fancy done in an amazingly beautiful way where you can, by reading, somebody with passion poured himself into that book. And and that really shows. So if the trade dress would hold up more, I would say that would be a solid 60 to 6, somewhere to 60 to between 60 and 65.
I love that you're taking this number rating thing seriously when it was such a stupid scale. But yes, thank you, Manuel. Eric, how do you feel? Do you feel like this is something you'll be picking up? Oh, you already own it, don't you?
Well, Scott graciously sent me a copy of the PDF. For me, I mean, listening to Manuel, and I mean, I did read a little bit here and there and skimmed it. First thing I'm going to say is that bravo for going through it, even if the Kickstarter didn't work out. He made it happen with what he had. With the resources he had, and that's great. The fact that it's quite a short book, 80 pages, that's a good thing for those that don't like to read a lot of lore. So you don't have a whole lot of that. Plus, not many setting rules. So I think one thing I noticed is that Scott seems to master the Savage Worlds rules really well, and adopted the less is more approach to design, which is great. Now, if we move on to the setting itself, and if it's something that I would run, it's not really my cup of tea, really. And it's not really anyone's fault. It's just it's not really my thing. So I can't knock it because of that, because it's just not my type of setting. But with that said, I think with the resources he had and his design choices, that's great.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that it sounds fantastic in terms of like what he's done and everything in there. It sounds really comprehensive in terms of running that type of post-apocalyptic fantasy game, and the fact that he's gone for all original races and stuff is a really bold choice, and all original type of gods, and it is like an original idea pasted on top of an unoriginal one, which I think is a bold choice, because a lot of times when you play post-apocalyptic games, what people want is the same old tired stuff, and that's already been done. So if you do that, it's not going to sell, but that's what people ask for when they want it, which is really dumb. But I think that what he's done here is an original idea, which is cool, and I like that, I respect that. However, I have to agree with Eric. I don't know if I would run this, because I fall into that same camp as all the other stupid idiots out there, where when I run post-apocalyptic, I kind of like the same old tired things, and it's mainly because I'm a big Fallout fan. I'm a big fan of zombie movies and things like this, and as a result, this isn't for me. But I think he's done a spectacular job, so got to applaud him for that.
Yeah, but maybe Manuel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this is a post-apocalyptic game. It's a fantasy setting that takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting. So it doesn't follow the same tropes as Fallout. It's not about scarcity and these types of tropes. It's just the post-apocalyptic setting is just a backdrop to a fantasy adventure.
Yeah, but I thought
exactly. It just draws the broad horizon of where it all came from, but what developed from there is not typical post-apocalyptic gaming like Fallout.
Oh, I thought that there was like scavenging and things like this going on, but am I wrong?
It is still there, and you can go scavenging for old tech. But the point is, only Tinker Mages can use the older technology to make their own creations work. So it's not like everybody is going to be going for an AC to get their hut air controlled.
I get
This
you.
doesn't
I
work
get you.
like that.
I mean, the thing is,
Because when you think about it, and when you play a typical fantasy setting, you go scavenging for treasures of an ancient civilization, really. And this is the same thing here, but I don't picture the missions, and even looking at some of the Savage Tales and the Plot Point campaign, I didn't get the sense that your mission is to find a piece of steak because you're starving. It's not that,
No, I pictured that as well. But
or 3 bullets.
I pictured that as well. I was just thinking, like, to an extent, that, like, I knew it was that type of setting where it's moved on, and to the point where now people are living in proper settlements. But I pictured that, a lot of fantasy settings where you're delving. In this, a lot of those delves would, take place overground, and things like this in old buildings, such as ones we would be living in now. That's what I was thinking. But instead of scavenging for food, you've already got food, but you're more looking for things like this, or somebody spotted a beastie outside of town, and you're gonna go and kill it, and it would be in like a big old city, and you're living somewhere different, and things like this. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, absolutely. So the ruins of Boston are still there, and there's dragons in there nesting in old skyscrapers where you have to go to find certain artifacts, parts for Tinker Mages or something like that. So it mixes in that you are coming from, that the world has come from our modern times, but it is subtle because it has, at that point where the story happens, it has just blended so much.
And I do like that idea. It's just that, yeah, I have also seen this idea done before as well, and it's good. And I'm just saying that there's other ways that I've seen it done, and like, for as I say, I'm just more of a traditionalist when it comes to that kind of thing. And in Pathfinder, for example, there are some modules that dealt with that, and I really enjoyed it, and it was cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, as I say, it's not my necessarily my cup of tea, and I might run a few one-shots in this setting, and I think it would be really, really awesome. But I don't necessarily think I would run the Plot Point campaign.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think,
not everybody has the same taste.
Exactly, but I do applaud the work that he's put into it. I think it's incredible, and to get that sort of real knockback from not getting funded on Kickstarter and just go, cool, I'm going to do it anyway. I think you got to applaud that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kudos, man, for going through with all that. And I actually have the hardcover edition of the book. And while it could look a lot better, I am happy with the book. And this is sitting proud on my shelf. And I'm looking forward to running a few games in it, see how it handles at the table. Mm-hmm. Because yeah, I'm really happy with what I got.
All right then. So that's Fair enough. For children.
Thank you, Manuel.
Yes, thank you, Manuel, and that concludes our Manuel's review of Children of the Really Goofed Up World. And then, but now it's not goofed up; it's doing all right now, and there's dragons in it.
Apocalyptic dragons.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.